Yasharahla. 1, 2, 3. Shalam Yasharahla. Exactly, baby. New moon. It's a new moon.
Y'all know what it is. Another really main production. Beheld with my own eyes, ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing. I tell my Akum Shalom as we pour around the drinks. We could look up in the sky and know exactly what he thinks. It's a new moon, a celebration. The Kaaba, the Trula that's before me is the only temptation. Tonight we do it right, so call up all the tribes to see my fifth shot like the book of Deuteronomy. Hey, these laws are part of me, and I get ruled with wicked Jews like Nehemiah. You gon' have to pardon me, kind. Just look at what we built together. Our haters probably couldn't imagine the better successor, but all praises go to Yah, cause we don't worship men. You know that Jake's always late, let them brothers in. A holy feast, so you know we came dap it down. Menorah chains, yellow diamonds with a golden crown. Yeah, Howard Shah got a hand, he ain't gon' let us drown. We get it cracking once you hear them trumpets sound. At first light, right before the sunset, beheld with my own eyes, ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Y'all know what it is, another Woolly Main production. At first light, right before the sunset, beheld with my own eyes, ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing. Look, I was too focused on the ways of men. Had to refocus, turn my ways to him. Let's get it right, we ain't afraid of men. The kingdom is the goal, and yes, we aim to win. Our fathers watched to see the month begin. There must be light, the sea was groping, trying to make it in. Father, forgive us for this sin, cause we didn't know no better. Glad our fathers kept a record, this cannot be severed. Not the conjunction or the fool, it was in those letters. Not one jot, no one tittle, by the law we fed it. We'll probably get the kingdom faster if we work together. Glorified and it will never.
We celebrate.
Yo, Big Bo.
Don't get When we celebrate, and I want to take the opportunity right now to say all praise be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah. I'm going to say that one more time. All praise be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah. And we bless. The spirit of one of my dear brothers, Zabak, I want to say, and we gonna do it. Check it out, this is how we gonna do it. On the count of 3, I want y'all to say, Yasharahla. 1, 2, 3,
Y'all know what it is, another Woolly Main production. Beheld with my own eyes, ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing. I tell my Akim Shalom as we pour around the drinks. We could look up in the sky and know exactly what he thinks. It's a new moon, a celebration. The cowboy, the truly that's before me is the only temptation. Tonight we do it right, so call up all the tribes to see my fifth shot like the book of Deuteronomy. Hey, these laws are part of me, and I get ruled with wicked Jews like Nehemiah. You gon' have to pardon me. Just look at what we built together. Our haters probably couldn't imagine the better successor, but all praises go to Yah, cause we don't worship men. You know that Jake's always late, let them brothers in. A holy feast, so you know we came dapper down. Menorah chains, yellow diamonds with a golden crown. Yeah, Howard Shy got a hand, he ain't gon' let us drown. We get it cracking once you hear them trumpets sound.
At first light, right before the sunset, beheld with my own eyes. Ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon. The first crescent.
Studying him is gonna let us know what we can be aware of today. So let's get into Ham. Get Genesis chapter 10.
And y'all know what it is. Another Woolly Mane production.
At first light, right before the sunset, beheld with my own eyes. Ah, but what a blessing. It's a new moon, the first crescent. We gon' share some mirth and some gladness. Ain't nobody stressing. Look, I was too focused on the ways of men. Had to refocus, turn my ways to him. Let's get it right, we ain't afraid of men. The kingdom is the goal, and yes, we aim to win. Our fathers watched to see the month begin. There must be light, the sea was groping, trying to make it in. Father, forgive us for this sin, cause we didn't know no better. Glad our fathers kept a record, this cannot be severed. Not the conjunction or the fool, it was in those letters. Not one jot, no one tittle, by the law we fed it. We'll probably get the kingdom faster if we work together. Glorified and it will never.
We celebrate.
Yo, Big Bo.
And we're about to get into the children born to them after the flood. All right? Yeah.
This is Genesis chapter 10 and verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush.
Khan, you can stop right there.
Khan.
So we got sons of Ham, Cush, Mitzrayim, Phut or Phut, and Canaan. 4 principal sons right there. So let's get this definition real quick. Go ahead and read that. Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary.
This is the whole thing?
Ham.
Okay, this is Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor. The progenitor.
God.
The progenitor of the dark races.
Progenitor of the dark races. This is the overriding principle in the community, of religious Bible study, that Ham is the progenitor of the dark races. Go on.
Not the Negroes.
Not the Negroes. So this is something interesting about Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary. And just real quick, hold that, the Catholic Church, especially during the times of the transatlantic slave trade, actually used what they called the curse of Ham in the scriptures. It was Canaan who was cursed, right? But they used this curse of Ham or curse of Canaan as a justification for slavery. You understand? That they had a right to enslave the darker races, being us. So, and we'll get into that a little more, but go ahead and read.
Not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites.
Right there. So, what we just read in Genesis were Ham's 4 principal sons, right? And right there are his 4 principal sons in antiquity. Go ahead and read that verse one more time. Genesis 10 and
6.
Khan.
And the sons of Ham, Cush,
right? So Cush would be Ethiopians, all right? If we're talking antiquity. Go ahead.
Mizraim,
Mitzrayim, that's Egypt.
Foot,
Libyans.
and Canaan.
Canaanites, the people who inhabited the land of Canaan, which would be the land of Israel. All right? So, So go ahead and, well, real quick, just to establish this, right? So throughout different time periods, we're talking in antiquity here, where we're identifying these races. And it says Ham is the progenitor of the dark races, so which would be so-called Africans. Now, you look at Egyptians today, they're not a dark people, very light complexioned. They don't look like they can work in the fields very long. And you know, even as a matter of fact, I don't know if you had this in your history class when I was a boy in school, but we'd open it up to Egypt. It'd have that white man in a pharaoh's hat. You know what I'm saying? So why is that? If these people descend from Ham, why are they light? Well, to simply answer that question, over the course of history, you have many people who are conquerors and many people who are conquered. And with conquered people, their nobility and many of their population gets displaced by their conquerors who come in, take over, and allow their population to come in and have the high places in society, reproduce and as such, not to mention the taking of slaves of that matter. So that is why Egypt, over the course of time, has become lighter. You have their original dark complexion, then going into, you could say they were conquered by Greece, Alexander the Great, which led to the Ptolemaic dynasty by Ptolemy. Those were Greeks. And then you'll have going into the time of the Romans when they controlled Egypt. Of course, the Arabs got in there a couple times with their Muslim conquests after that. And right now, today, Egypt is predominantly light or white Arabs. So that is how the transition of their culture happened. Even so, when we look, because we also mentioned Phut, one of the sons of Ham, being the Libyans. Even so, they're along the northern coast of Africa. The people who inhabited that northern coast, we would call them today as Berbers. So those people, even them with Arab conquests, Roman conquests, pretty much an entire Arab washing or whitewashing of this northern coast of Africa was happening. But we got to keep these things all in, you know, a proper timeline and time frame, understanding when the Greeks were in power, understanding when the Romans were in power, understanding when the Arabs came in power with the rise of Islam and their conquests throughout the Mediterranean. So these are important things to understand because why? They use the justification, the Catholic Church, of the curse of Ham or the curse of Canaan as this white supremacist idea that came about that these darker races are meant for slavery. And they tried to include us in there. But what this Zondervan's will tell you and what contemporary literature will tell you is that really Cushitic or Kushite people, which are Ethiopians, and other Hamitic peoples, which are the ones we just described, they would be Horn Africans, which includes Somalians, even to an extent Kenyans, right? They would include those of Egypt or Mitzrayim's line, which would be, you know, your Egyptians and more so today Nubians or Sudanese. And these are the darker complexion people that come from Ham in contemporary literature. But when you look at the huge continent of Africa, that's really only the northeastern section. And you could say the whole north going up to that tip next to Spain, but really the northeast of Africa. What's left? We have what's called the sub-Saharan, which would include where we know Israelites were: Mali, Ghana. You have the Fulani tribe, the Igbo tribe, Nigerians. And many of these sub-Saharan African peoples had cultures and traditions that relate to the Hebrew Bible, our culture. You know, not many cultures you're going to find circumcision on the 8th day. Not many. But in those sub-Saharan cultures, you find it. In those sub-Saharan cultures, you find that they're keeping feast days. They're giving up the first fruits of their feast during the springtime. Who does these things? Who has all these cultural traditions? There's a difference between the Israelites and the darker races of Africa, right? And it's based on our culture, our traditions, our heritage. And of course, you can look at our migration patterns as well. So one of these migrations, probably the most famous one you're going to find, is after the siege of Jerusalem, when our people, the Israelites, the Jews mostly, were kicked out of the Holy Land. And they scattered into a great many directions, but the majority of those Jews went into a place where they could hide effectively, right, from this persecution by who? The Roman Empire. They were behind the siege of Jerusalem. So most of them fled into Africa, all right, along that northern coast and down into the sub-Sahara. So they had to go past these Hamitic peoples and find other land to form their own kingdoms and empires. And since then, of course, we would have dealings with them. And that would be around the time of 70 AD, right? So what are we looking at around that time? The Romans are in control. This is before the huge explosion or expansion of Islam. So what we're looking at is a Egypt that is predominantly controlled by Greek Romans, and the northern coast, you could say there's still some Hamitic peoples there, but also you have things like the Punic Wars with Carthage. So there was still some conquest that happened in that area that, you know, pushed our people down south in escaping from the Romans. Let's get back to Genesis 10, and we're going to see if we can finish out this genealogy and just give an idea as to who we're talking about when we read the Bible. Who are, say, the Hittites when we read about them? Who are these people? So go ahead.
Verse 7. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Rahamah, and Sabticha, and the sons of Rahamah, Sheba, and Dinah.
Dedan, Khan. So, special thing about Cush, it has a lot of special things, but even Ethiopia today has a cool stat. When we talk about the partition of Africa, which was the dividing of Africa for the Atlantic slave trade, Ethiopia, they weren't conquered. So they were able to resist that whitewashing that took place, in a sense. So what does that mean? It means in a sense, their bloodline is more pure than other bloodlines we're going to find. So when we look at the people of Ethiopia, they're going to more closely relate back to their ancient ancestors than, say, the northern Egyptians. So that's a good indicator of what kind of people we're talking about. Go ahead, verse 8.
And Cush begot Nimrod.
And Cush begat Nimrod. Nimrod's a special guy, right? Nimrod's a special guy, and we're going to read about him. But when you read about Nimrod, he is a descendant of Cush, a descendant of Ham, a dark-skinned man. Think of an Ethiopian. Right? So that's the picture we're going to have in our head. So go ahead and read about him.
He began to be a mighty one in the earth. Verse 9, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord.
This dude was that guy. You know what I'm saying? He was well respected, well feared throughout the whole earth. And a reminder, this is post-flood. There's not the billions of people there are on the earth right now. This is a much smaller community, still large for him to be known throughout all these people. The people have obviously spread out and created communities, but he became essentially the mightiest human being out there, at least by his fame.
In his time.
Khan. Verse 10.
Verse 10. And in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and
Erech,
and
Akkad,
Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar.
in the land of Shinar. These are all great places to look up, right? But what you want to focus, in the land of Shinar. We're talking about Iraq. We're talking about Cushites, a Cushite man establishing the first kingdom post-flood or antediluvian, establishing the first kingdom here in the land of Shinar, which would be Iraq, Mesopotamian area, Fertile Crescent area, where most scholars would say civilization began. So, and they wouldn't be too far off from that. So, what we're going to get, it says, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, right? So, keep reading verse 11.
This is verse 11. Out of that land went forth a shore and builded Nineveh and the city Rehoboth and Calath. And reason between Nineveh and Calath, the same is a great city.
Khan.
And Mizrahim begot Ludim and Anamim and Lehabin and Nephtuhim.
Khan. So these were the sons of Mitzrayim we're getting into right now. All right? So as for the sons of Mitzrayim, that means descendants of your Egyptian people. So keep going.
Verse 14, and Pathrasim and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim and Caphtorim.
Now, excellent part about this verse 14 you want to pay attention to, out of whom came Philistim, progenitor of the Philistines. What does that mean? The Egyptians are the direct ancestor of the Philistine people. If you know your Bible history, what's King David famous for?
You gonna put me on the spot?
Yeah, I'll put you on the spot. He's famous for a couple things, but
He conquered the Philistines, right?
he conquered the Philistines by slaying the man Goliath, right? And eventually fighting against these other Philistines. He had many wars with them, and he conquered them. You read all about how at one time they stole the Ark of the Covenant from us. These people were our mortal enemies for quite some bit. But when I was younger and thought about the Philistines, and specifically I thought about David and Goliath, right? I thought, Goliath. He was this big, burly, pretty much white man. You know what I'm saying? But what we're reading here is he came directly from the Egyptian line. That would make him a big, tall African type dude. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of people those were. Tall, dark, all of them. So it's important to get these things in our heads so we know what we're talking about, because so much of Israelite history is intertwined with our dealings with the Canaanites. So much of our history is the Hamites, is God telling us not to do what various Hamite groups do. Don't do what the Egyptians did. Don't do what the Canaanites did. You know what I'm saying? So it's important to understand how close ties we had with these people. Israel dwelt in the land of Canaan. You got to understand how much we probably looked alike, both dark people. We hid amongst the Egyptians. We were among the Egyptians in Egypt and came out a mixed multitude. there was mixing going on. So what does that mean? We're going to look relatively similar as a people as opposed to other groups, as opposed to Japheth. You know what I'm saying? Which means it stands to reason if Ham is black, Israel's about as black. So
That's right. Keep reading.
let's get, I wanna focus on these Philistines real quick.
Go on.
So can we get Judges 16:23? We're going to find out a little bit about these Philistines.
This is Judges chapter 16 and verse 23. Then the Lord of the Philistines gathered them together for to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon, their god.
Unto who?
Dagon.
Dagon or Dagon or
Dagon.
any of those, right? Or yeah. So go ahead.
And to rejoice, for they said, our God hath delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand.
So Samson was one of our judges at this time. He was a judge of Israel, a mighty man, a Nazarite, famous for his strength and killing lots of who? Philistines. Now, this is at the point where he's been captured, right? That woman, I believe her name was Delilah, she had finally convinced him to give up the secret to his strength, and she cut off his hair, and he was able to be captured, right? So, but this is their god, Dagon. Interesting thing about Dagon, let's see, I have something to pull up for him. But Dagon was one of the principal gods of these Philistine Hamitic people. So go ahead and read that.
Dagon, the Semitic god. Dagon, also spelled Dagon, West Semitic god of crop fertility, worshipped extensively throughout the ancient Middle East. Dagon was the Hebrew and Ugaritic common noun for grain, and the god Dagon was the legendary inventor of the plow.
So he's a fertility crop god, right? He brings in a large bounty of food. That's why people worship him. They worship him since ancient Semitic times, right? So we're talking Babylonian times, all right? So go ahead.
His cult is attested as early as about 2500 BC.
We're talking, that's right up there with flood times. It's getting up there, 2500 BC. So we're talking right in that high Babylonian era, Dagon existed. So go ahead.
And according to texts found in the Ras Shamara, ancient Ugarit, he was the father of the god Baal.
So Dagon was the father to the god Baal, another god that we contested with sharply in these scriptures, right? Many of us turn to Baal worship at some point or time in these scriptures, and God wasn't happy about that. But Dagon would be the father god to this Baal. So go ahead.
Dagon had an important temple in Ras Shamra and in Palestine, where he was particularly known as a god of the Philistines.
Khan.
He had several sanctuaries, including those at Beth Dagon in Asher. That's in Joshua 19 and 27. Gaza, Judges 16 and 23, and Ashdod in 1 Samuel 5, verses 2 through 7. At Ras Shamra, Dagon was apparently second in importance only to El, the supreme god, although his functions as a god of vegetation seem to have been transferred to Baal by about 1500 BC.
Khan. So that's some little information about Dagon for you, and we're going to get into these other gods as well, just so you can have the understanding. And Dagon was a fish god. He was represented as sometimes being half man, half fish, usually an upper portion being a fish, like a trout or something. You know what I'm saying? And a lower portion of his man, sometimes it'll just be his head. And even later times, he'll be depicted as a full man wearing the hat of a fish, right? Like a fish hat. It'll have like a round shape, and then the top will come up, and it'll go in, and like that. Like it'll look like a fish mouth rising out of the water. Now, I want to put this in your mind, though. What does a Catholic bishop's mitre look like? Ooh. Right. See, these are things we got to look up, Israel. These are things we got to understand. Look up the similarities between this fish god head that these priests wore and our Catholic priests and what they wore on their head. It's eerily similar. It's eerily similar. But what we're going to find out is in these religions that are peddled about today, specifically Catholicism and modern-day Christianity, is that a lot of paganism is mixed in. And a lot of this paganism originates in Babylon. And who's the leader of Babylon, ancient Babylon? Nimrod, Cush. It starts with Ham, you know? And we got to learn these things. How would I know why this dude's hat has a going-in cut up here for no reason? Why would I know? But I've studied what Dagon, this god, what does he look like? What is he about? Fertility god. Everybody has a fertility god. But now that I know his symbolism, his symbols, his idol, how we view his idol, I know now, oh, wow, something's off with this Catholicism. Something's off. Well, we're going to see what else is off. You know, let's finish out that Judges, just to give some credit to our brother Samson.
This is verse 24. And when the people saw him, they praised their God. For they said, our God hath delivered into our hands our enemy and the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us.
So the Philistines right now are at their feast hall. They're actually at a feast hall within the temple of Dagon. And they have Samson captured and chained, you know. So they're just all talking their mess about him. They're saying, oh, thank you, Dagon. Oh, our God's better than your God. You're not strong no more. Boo-hoo, look at you. Go ahead, keep reading.
25. And it came to pass when their hearts were merry that they said, call for Samson, that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport. And they set him between the pillars. And Samson said unto the lad that held him by the hand, suffer me, that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house standeth, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld while Samson made sport.
Calm.
And Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen me, I pray thee, only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and on which it bore up, of the one with his right hand and the other with his left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might. He bowed himself with all his might, Salakia. And the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at this death were more than they which he slew in his life.
Whoo! Whoo! That's crazy. Go ahead.
Then his brethren and all the house of his father came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorha and Eshtaol in the burying place of Manoah his father. And he judged Israel 20 years.
So Samson was the judge of Israel for 20 years. Now, you read his story, you're going to read about how he made his mistakes. He decided to trust his enemy, the Philistine, that woman Delilah, even though they sent her specifically to figure out what to do with him, how to take him out. They finally figured out. They capture him. They roasting the man. They clowning him, and he says, Lord, one last time, let me die with him. And it says the Lord gave him that strength one last time, and he killed more Philistines there than he ever did in his life. All their lords and their princes. Whoo! You know what? That's what's up, man. That's like there being a rally, a big rally at the White House or something like that.
Right.
It could be any governmental institution you want, and all the big wigs are there. You got your head of war, you got your head of money. All of them are there. They're all celebrating the great victory. They just won, and then boom. All gone. All gone. Their entire infrastructure as a people shaken right there. That's a huge moment for us.
All praises.
All praises. All praises. You know what? Let's get back to Genesis 10. We're going to finish out this lineage, and then we're going to get back to Nimrod.
Genesis 10.
And I just hope you all are understanding, because what we read at the start was everything that was aforetime. There's nothing new under the sun. And everything that was before is going to come back now. So that's why we're learning all of this. That's why we're inquiring of the history of our forefathers, because history teaches us how to be prepared. It operates in a cycle. You understand? One thing happens, another thing happens, and then the cycle repeats. That's where we're at now. We got to understand where we're at in this cycle so we can overcome in the end. So let's finish this out.
This is Genesis chapter 10 and verse 15. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girvastite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite.
God.
And the Arvadite, and the Zemarite, and the Hathmathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad.
So they were spread all throughout this land of Canaan. These were the people all throughout the land of Canaan. When you read our Exodus story and the land we had to come into, these were the people occupying that land. These Canaanites, brother to the Egyptians, descendant of Ham, all dark-skinned people. You understand? And even so, let's just finish off with verse 20.
This is Genesis 10 and 20. These are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations.
So, all the sons of Ham spread out through, you could say, the northeastern part of Africa, what's called the Horn of Africa, going up towards Egypt. You have the Nile Valley, the Nile River Valley, all that, going into a bit of North Africa, and of course, the land of Canaan or the land of Israel. These were where the Hamites were spread during antiquity, all right? And it's important, once again, to say antiquity. You understand? Because over thousands of years, the world has become mixed up. God separated us for a reason, but over these course of thousands of years, migration patterns, conquest, slavery, all that has caused the world to be a bit jumbled up, a bit mixed up. So you got some brothers today have a problem where it'll be like, if they're African, they're a Hamite. Like, that's the problem, It's like if they don't speak English and they dark skin, you think they're a Hamite for some reason. So it's important to use discernment, right, to understand that, hey, if we're talking about sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of those people are going to be of Israelite stock, most likely. Fulani, talking about Igbo, we're talking about people of Mali, Ghana. We're talking about even some South Africans, not the white South Africans who are persecuting the indigenous people with apartheid, but we're talking about the indigenous South Africans that keep these holy feasts, that keep a first fruit, that circumcise, that have our traditions and cultures, all right? So that's the kind of study we need to do to understand the difference between their people and our people, all right? And another thing, just to mention this real quick, with the transatlantic slave trade, even the Arab slave trade, they'll say this too, is that, you know, blacks were selling other blacks into slavery. It's not us. It's not us. Right. we just came along and we just bought what was already on the market.
It was your people selling your people.
It was your people selling your people. You know, that's what they'll say. But in reality, the people there, they knew the difference between their tribe and another tribe.
Absolutely.
They knew the difference, and they say, hey,
these aren't our people.
So we have laws in the Bible that say we can't sell our brethren into slavery, right? You have, you know, some of us were going off. Some of us were sinning. But for those of us keeping our culture and our heritage, it's not in our culture to put our brother in hard bondage. If anything, it's like if one of our brothers homeless, we allow him into our house to serve. We pay him. You know what I'm saying? Easy work. We don't deal with him with rigor, even though he can be a servant unto us. That's the difference between the so-called slavery we would have and the slavery we were put through by the Arab slave trade, by the transatlantic slave trade, right? So what you had in Africa going on was basically these European powers providing the opportunity and money. It's a supply and demand thing. The Europeans will supply the demand, but they demand the slaves from these Hamites. The Hamites were like, well, we're going to take those people into slavery. We're going to take that tribe into slavery. We're not going to take our tribe into slavery. And then it became something of an arms race where the Europeans are peddling guns and money into this country, into this continent. How do you keep up when the tribe they're trading with gets the guns to defend their tribe? Well, you got to partake a little bit.
Right.
It's tough. It's a cold game. But that's how it went. You know, some of us went off, but for the most part, it was a well-orchestrated event because the European powers, they couldn't. Africa had many, many strong kingdoms. And what a lot of people don't know is that the kingdom of Mali, which Mansa Musa was from, the richest man ever, that was a strong kingdom right up until the time of the transatlantic slave trade. The European powers couldn't come up in there and box with them. They was mighty. They was mighty. But with that kingdom and the other strong kingdoms throughout this huge continent, you have to divide and conquer. You have to come in kind of a little bit. You got to say, hey, I'm willing to trade. I'll give you these cool guns. I just want a couple people. You know? And then, you know, it became a thing, well, you got more of these guns, we'll give you more people because we took some of their people. Now they kind of want revenge. So we kind of need more defense. And, well, now those people are coming to you to get guns so they can take revenge on us. And it became a whole tribal warfare, back and forth thing, no holds barred. We're talking the destruction of multiple kingdoms by the people who lived there. You know, all starting with that partition of Africa, all starting with the Catholic Church giving out the edict, right? He wrote it in an edict, just like he did for the Native Americans to do the Inquisition and conquistas on them. He said, these are a lesser people. You can go in there and evangelize them. You understand? And it's good for God.
Right.
But let's get back to it.
Our God.
Their God.
Right.
Their God. Good for them. They even tell you if you read the letter that was written for those conquistas, it says our God has given us the divine right to give you the chance to bow to us and to our king and queen, or we have the right to bring upon you every terror imaginable. It sounded like they copy and pasted the curses from Deuteronomy in there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They go down a list. We will what? Steal your children, separate your families, not to mention the disease. But
They were like, it's biblical.
that part. But we're going to understand more about why this Catholic Church and even the other churches, even the other denominations are going off. How in reality, they are paganism under the guise of Jesus,
Right.
which they're going to have a rude awakening when he comes back. But let's go to Genesis 11. We gotta bring it all together.
From the top.
Yeah, from the top.
And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass.
Well, hold on.
Come on.
Read that part slow. That's important for later.
This is Genesis 11 and 1.
We got to really get this part in our mind so we understand how this paganism spread and how it morphed and changed. So read that again.
And the world and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech.
Everybody is calling everything the same thing, right? They all have an understanding of their same culture,
Right.
same language, same speech, right? It said language and speech. Right. They spoke the same way.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. I meet a Jamaican person, I have no idea what they're saying.
It's understandable.
The words they say in English don't mean the same thing mine do in English. They've developed an entirely different culture. It might as well be a different language. You understand? I tell them one thing, and it means another to them. So that's important to understand for how, one, Nimrod came into power, and two, we're going to find out later, how this paganism spread. So let's read.
Verse 2, and it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there.
So remember, it said Nimrod established the first kingdom post-flood. So you have all these people, they're hearing about a mighty man. They're hearing about a dude who's got something set up here in Shinar. And they're like, let me go there, right? So you got an influx of people to this fertile crescent in Iraq. And people are starting to dwell there. A city, a nation, a kingdom, an empire is being built up. Let's go ahead.
Verse 3, and they said one to another, go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto the heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth.
This is really the start of the idolatry here. They're saying, let us build a tower up into heaven, lest they be scattered across the whole earth. They're scared of something. They want a contest against God. You know about obelisks, these towers, these monuments. Basically, they were centers of idolatry. An obelisk, it's like a pointed shaft, right, pointing towards the sky. Essentially, what they're building, a big tower, but that was the start of idolatry there, because back in the pagan days, you have people worshiping essentially, and not to get too graphic, but essentially men worshiping their men part, their erect men parts, right? And that's essentially what these tall, pointed, erect towers are. Pause. You know what I'm saying? But so this is the start of it. And so let's go on and read and see how the Lord feels about it.
Verse 5, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do.
You know, the imaginations of man is vain. The heart is deceitfully wicked.
That's right.
And we know that the heart, it really means your mind.
That's right.
It really means the thoughts of man are continuously wicked. We're wise to do evil.
Deceitfully wicked.
Deceitfully wicked. So this is what it's saying here. It says, nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. They've imagined wicked things to do. And none of that's going to be restrained from them. God is looking at this, and he's like, man, I promised I wasn't going to flood the earth again, but they getting there. You know? So, being the merciful God that he is, he decided to stop it, confound their language. Let's read it.
Verse 7. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, that they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
So this is why this verse right here in this chapter, verse 1 and verse 9, it says in verse 1, they were all of one language. Then it goes into they had the power to do whatever they want. And what did they do? They did wickedly. They created idol worship. And remember, Nimrod's in control of all this. He's essentially their God king, directing them all to do things the Lord would have them not do, right? Which is what the start of our paganism that we contest with.
Come on.
So, what does it say here in verse 9? The Lord confounded all their language and scattered them. So, we got to put this in context. The people are doing these pagan practices. They're against God, and then they get their languages confounded and they're scattered. That means the sun worship God that this guy was worshiping is now in a different language and he's in a different place. And so on and so forth for everybody and all the pagan practices they did. All these people who will populate the whole earth did the same pagan practices. Now the only difference is they call them by a different name.
Right.
Because they have a different language. That's why the Catholic priests have a Dagon fish head. They don't call it Dagon. They don't mean that. You ask them, they'll say, we don't mean Dagon, but you have an idol.
Right.
And where'd you get that from? Their fathers, their forefathers,
exactly.
All that were of a different language.
It's tradition.
Right? That's why every culture has a fertility god.
That's right.
That's why every culture has a sun god. Every culture has the same pattern of gods. Ain't nothing new under the sun. They just call them by different names because they speak different languages, and over time of living in the different places of the earth they were scattered to, there was some slight differences they developed in their myths and their folklore, you know. But you've got the thunder god Zeus, famous for his lightning. You got the thunder god Thor, famous for his thunder. Right. You know what I'm saying? The Greeks, the Norse, the Egyptians, they all have their all-father God, their dominant God-father figure. And here's how the pattern's going to play out. There's also a mother God. Right. And then there's the special son God.
Right.
Right? Right. The pagan trinity. You understand? But every culture just calls it something a little different. Every culture does it a little bit different. And this is with all paganism. Right? So, and I implore you guys to look this up, you know. I have a little graphic here. It's not hard to find, but it'll be good for your studies if you find it on your own. And just realize, but I'm going to have my brother here read it off. So right here, we got the start. Well, I'll read it. So we got, you know, in ancient Babylon, we're going to go through some of these pagan trinities. You've got Nimrod, right, the first god king, Semiramis, his wife in history, and Tammuz would be his son, right? How does the story go? So Nimrod, he died. Semiramis, it could be for a multitude of reasons, but she concocted a story, a fable, that Nimrod, he was no mere mortal man. No mere mortal man. He ascended to godhood, to the heavens. He is the Son. And guess what? Y'all gonna love this. And guess what? I, Semiramis, have conceived a child as a virgin. I have not had sex. But the sun's rays, God itself, the sun, has his rays shone on me, and they impregnated me. And he has put himself in me, and this child will be God himself, Nimrod, born again, of a virgin birth. And this is all coming from Babylon, ancient Babylon. And his name was Tammuz. And guess what? She said everybody has to follow Tammuz now, but he's a baby. He can't talk. So in reality, they're following her, this queen of heaven. Look up that name. See the rabbit hole you go into about how many different deities had this queen of heaven, and see where it goes back to. It's going to go back to Babylon, right? So she was basically in control here, and she established all these pagan idols. All these pagan idols. You got to worship this father god. You got to worship this mother god, and you got to worship this son god. And you got to worship them all together. All right? It's going to go down. That's Babylon. Then we get the Egypt. Shoot. If you know about Egypt religion, you got Ra, you got Isis, you got Horus. Pay attention. It follows the same pattern. Isis is impregnated. She has this baby who is the god, this sun god, which is Horus. And it all follows this pattern here. You even got Baal and Ashtaroth. We read earlier how Dagon is the father of this Baal. You have Ashtaroth, which is the wife figure in this one. There's going to be slight differences just because different all throughout the world, the differences in these cultures, but you're always going to have some kind of trifecta in there of a really popular son, the mother, and then that all-powerful all-father, all right? You've got, let's see, Greece right here. You got Zeus, you got Aphrodite, Dionysius, you got Rome, which will be like Jupiter, Diana, and Apollo. But we know Zeus and Jupiter are one and the same, right? We know Apollo, he's that guy. What does he do? He has that chariot, and he's supposed to drag the sun across the sky.
Right.
That's their son, man. You got Odin and Thor. It'll change, whoever Thor's mother is in one of these stories. But you even coming down to our modern day, you even have God the Father, the Virgin Mary, and whom the world calls Jesus Christ. They will put in this Trinity, right? And this goes all the way back to Babylon. Because in the Catholic Church, what they do, they believe in the perpetual virginity of Mary, right? How she never had sex. Right. Don't ask me how it makes sense. Christ had brothers and sisters, but I don't know, maybe who does the will of my Father is my brother. Know, I don't know how they explain it, but this is where the idea of a Trinity comes from. But we are talking about how all this paganism from back then has went from Babylon to Egypt, popularized by Greece throughout the Hellenization period, right? Carried on by one of the most famous empires of all time, Rome, who establishes the Catholic Church, Roman Catholics. And now here we are today, in these last days, trying to wake up out of this valley of the dead. So, appreciate you for that. Let's get to some more paganism. I got some notes here. Looked up the origin of astrology. And remember, we're blazing through a lot of things here, talking about the descendants of Ham, the religions of Ham, And honestly, Egypt alone deserves a week-long course. You know what I'm saying? So the hope of this is to give you a foundation and a way to think about all this stuff. That's why we brought up, as the days before, so they are now. No new thing under the sun. That's why we showed you where it all started, in Babylon. We're going to show you where it all ends, in Babylon. But I got astrology here for you. Astrology originated in Babylon far back in antiquity, with Babylonians developing their own form of horoscopes around 2,400 years ago. That's right shortly after the flood, give or take X amount of time, right? Astrology then spread throughout the Mediterranean area and became popular in Egypt. You look back at horoscopes, a lot of them will tell you it started in Egypt. I mean, they're who made it popular, but the Babylonians had their own horoscopes based on stargazing, sun signs, moon signs. Why? Because they had sun worship. They had moon worship. So after it became popular in Egypt, it was thereafter spread by the Greeks. The modern style of astrology was created by the Greek modifications to it. Think of some astrology signs, right? You got Aquarius, you got Gemini. I'm not too good at them, Scorpio. But these are all Greek Latin words, right? The Egyptians wouldn't have had words like that. The Babylonians wouldn't have had words like that. So the modern astrology we have today, it's of the Greeks. But they adopted their main system from the Egyptians. And then the Egyptians got it from ancient Babylon. So that's just one thing. And you got to remember, you got to keep everything in context, because everything connects when we talk about this stuff. And at the end of the day, it's from war. You understand? It's from war. Why is it that only after, when the Greeks get it, that's when it spreads throughout the whole world? Why? The Greeks conquered Egypt. The Greeks conquered Egypt, And I think I brought it out earlier about the white man in the textbook wearing the pharaoh hat. But to be honest with you, the Egyptians were white. Uh-oh. But how far back?
Right.
Exactly. Did they build the pyramids? No. These white people did not.
Definitely not.
Did they create the arts and the sciences no.
Depends on who you ask.
It depends on who you ask, but they like to say it was their Renaissance period that did that. But if you look at ancient Egypt, they had a catalog of medical texts diagramming the human body. They understood how blood flowed in the body. They understood these things. They could perform surgery.
Right.
We even read how in our text, the Bible, Joseph became a high guy in Egypt, right under Pharaoh. Why? Because he was valuable. He brought Egypt into a whole nother level. Made them popular. And guess what? When Abraham dwelled there before him, made Egypt popping.
That's right.
What's popping is where we're at.
That's right. To this day.
To this day. You know what I'm saying? Whatever nation has us in captivity, that's the one that's popping.
Right.
You know what I mean? But just to get back on track, we have to keep everything in timeline, right? Because, you'll have people say the Egyptians were white. You have some people say they were black. You're not wrong, you're not right, you know? You know, it's important to understand that when the Greeks conquered and replaced their nobility, established that Ptolemaic dynasty, then they became whiter than they were. Then the Romans, then you've got the Arab Muslim conquest. A lot of changes happened to them. So it's important to understand that, and how when those Greeks came in, they see, and tell me if I'm wrong, but Caucasian people have a tendency to be obsessed with like a replacement culture.
Yep.
They're scared of getting replaced,
Right.
but they also do a lot of replacing.
They do the most, yeah.
They want to be the real Hebrews.
Right.
They want to be the real Egyptians.
Right.
Anybody that was popping, they say, well, it was us.
Right.
We iconoclasm, we're going to paint over the images. Renaissance period, we're going to paint over the images, make everybody white. That's what they want to do. And that's why that paganism got popular. When they adopted the culture of these places they went to, they adopted their practices, amalgamated them into their practice. They brought whatever they liked, they brought into their practice. The Romans were famous for that as a military strategy. That's why they were so successful. Any place they went and fought, they said, hey, over there on the right flank, them guys was tearing us up. The Roman generals will be like, well, we won. Now we're going to use the stuff they used. We're going to use the tactics they used. We're going to bring them in, and guess what? We're going to make them Roman citizens if they want to fight for us. And we're going to bring in their knowledge, their culture, their understanding, and amalgamate it into us. That's what an empire is, a land consisting of many nations and peoples. But how does an empire stay together? If you're able to draw a compromise between all these nations and peoples so they all feel like they're a part of the whole. You got to make it a melting pot. Right. You got to make it like you got to be one. You got to be of one language. Right. You got to be of one speech. You got to have one world order. You know what I'm saying? Ooh. You know what I'm saying? It's like that, man. It's like that. And that's why so much paganism was amalgamated into Christianity, especially at the time of the Nicene Council. Because you have the emperor, he's like, man, in the back of his mind, I got to keep my empire together. Christianity, not that popular. We were persecuting them not too long ago.
That's right.
And then they want to come out as the champions of Catholicism out of nowhere. Why? They changed the Sabbath day to Sunday.
Right.
Pagans worship on Sunday. Why? Because every pagan religion has a sun god. So it's easy to say, hey, everybody gonna worship on Sunday. Worship, the Father God. Worship the Father God. Everybody has a Father God.
Right.
It makes it easy. It makes it
appealing.
It makes it appealing. We're all together in this, So that's what you'll find, too, as you start pointing out more of these pagan practices. You're going to find out, one, they originated, it's going to say either Egypt or Babylon. Just know Egyptians got their stuff from Babylon. But, you know what? Let's bring another one to light here. Let's go to Jeremiah 10, and we'll start from the top, right? We'll start from the top. Because part of this lesson, descendants and religions of Ham. We talked about his principal descendants, the ones that are making the greatest impact out here. And the religions of Ham, I thought, well, we could talk about, there's thousands of pagan gods. You got river, mountain, lightning, and thunder. They get their own separate. You know what I'm saying? So, the list goes on forever, but today we're just trying to give you the understanding of what to look out for in the world today based on what this dude Ham caused so long ago. All right, So start from the top, Jeremiah 10.
So Jeremiah 10, hear ye the word which the Lord has speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen.
Learn not the way of the heathen. Does God have to specify which heathen?
No.
Do some of them have good practices?
Nope.
Or are they all basically the same?
Sounds like they're all basically the same.
You see that? So, learn not the way of the heathen. Let's keep going.
And be not dismayed at the signs of heaven.
The signs of heaven. That's that astrology. That's that divining of the stars. You know, that's that, hey, this is my sign, you know, and what's my horoscope for today, this week,
Right.
so I know how to conduct myself
Right.
accordingly. You're taking commandments from that thing, from
That's
those
right.
things. You know? Keep going.
For the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest and worketh of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with the nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also is it in them to do good.
Con. So this is part of your Hebrew basics when you first come into the truth. You got to learn what's up with Christmas,
That's right.
right? Jeremiah 10 right here, it tells you, hey, God, he's going to judge you if you're out here going into the forest, taking a tree down, bringing it home, setting it upright with what? Nails, decking it with silver and gold, ornaments.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He says that's a vain custom of the heathen. Let's look into that custom. You know what I'm saying? Where does it come from? You know, because it almost seems like God just picked something out of nowhere.
Right.
But that's not the case. That's not the case. What's the birth date of Tammuz? What's the birth date of Tammuz? December 25th. Is that a coincidence?
It's got to be.
Is that a coincidence?
Absolutely not.
You know what December 25th is? Is oftentimes the winter solstice.
Right.
I hope you see what's going on. Sun, moon worship. Summer solstice, winter solstice. It's when they do their pagan stuff. That's their high pagan days. Because what is the solstice determined by? Remember, early in the verse, God said, be not dismayed at the signs in heaven. You know, our people were very adept at looking at the stars and understanding what time of the year it is. Is it a good time to plant crops? You know, determining all sorts of things, developing high levels of math and timekeeping just from looking at the stars. But why did God say, be not dismayed at the signs of heaven? Why? You determine the summer solstice, winter solstice, spring equinox, fall equinox. These are determined by the stars' position in the sky. So what are people doing? The heathen are looking up and saying, the time is right. The stars are in position. The planets are in a line. We must now do the rituals. Like, that's what they're saying. And because all pagans have the same framework, you know, their flesh may be different, but the skeleton's the same, if you understand, of how it all works. They worship the sun, they worship the moon, and their high days are going to be when the stars and heavens are aligning in the perfect position. The summer has the longest day. The winter solstice has the longest night. That's when they do their stuff, man. And you got to watch out for that. So you know if your religion and its highest holy day is based around when equinox, or you know what I'm saying, you're probably in paganism.
Come on.
Probably in paganism. Our high holy days of our culture, we use a calendar based upon the moon and stars, But our culture, our high holy days are based around events in our history.
That's right.
They're based around honoring the Most High God at a day he chooses. You know, we honor the first day of Abib, first month of the year. When does that come? The new moon after the spring equinox.
Right.
Not on the spring equinox.
Right.
That's the difference between us and them.
It's one of the differences.
Many differences, you know, many differences. The only real similarity is that, you know, we're black people, they're dark-skinned people.
Right.
You know, this vagabond, the Caucasian, hasn't been around for, you know, very long, and they needed some kind of culture of their own. They really ain't had nothing.
Right.
So, you know, while we were forcibly scattered, they were forcibly going into places and taking other people's heritage, taking other people's cultures, while other people are forcing us to assimilate to their culture and their heritage.
They call that cultural appropriation?
Culture vultures. Culture vultures, man. You know what I'm saying? So that's Christmas right there. Deriving from, you know, the stars in heaven, looking at the signs in the sky, originating with the birth date of Tammuz, the son of God. You gotta connect the dots.
Right.
You know? And this is to encourage you. This is, you know, when I was in school, they were like, you know, you may think a lot of these courses are useless, but they're going to teach you how to think. And then you're going to know how to solve other problems you come in contact with. I was always like, man, these word problems, I ain't going to deal with them in real life. What kid you know got 35 apples?
Right.
Right. Until you go to Costco, but it became real then. But, you know, that's the point of, you know, higher learning, is they teach you how to think so that you know how to solve other problems you go through. So that's what the Bible tries to do. That's why these things are written for our learning, so that we can see the pattern that is happening in the Bible. And when we see that pattern happening, we know whether to go to or away from it. You know what pattern I see in the Bible? There ain't a chapter you could go to that don't say not to keep the law. But you know what it do say? It say, you know what, every time I see someone get judged or something, I seen sun worshipers get judged. You know what I'm saying? With Elijah. I've seen all types of judgment in the Bible, and it's all not according to the law.
That's right.
We got to be wise. We got to get an understanding of let's go to the law. Let's go to the law. Let's get that understanding real quick. I want Leviticus 18:3. Because God's going to tell us what this whole lesson about, man. You know, it's going to tell us.
This is Leviticus chapter 18 and verse 3. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do. Neither shall ye walk in their ordinances. Ye shall do my judgments and keep mine ordinances to walk therein. I am the Lord your God.
A question I had to ask myself, right? Because, I mean, we've been talking about this all lesson. We're talking about Hamites, talking about their practices, how they got, you know, and to not follow after them. But are these the only bad heathens? Why didn't he put the other heathens? Well, don't do after Elam, you know? Why? Because it's just not necessary. If you're not doing what the Egyptians did, if you're not doing what the Canaanites are doing, man, you're good.
Right.
That covers it all. Especially these two, Mitzrayim and Canaan, brothers in this thing. Sons of Ham, the originator. Cush was Nimrod, right?
Right.
These are the originators. These are the premier idolaters. If you can survive these guys, shoot, you be all right, Israel. If you can figure out their practices and not do them, not get seduced by them, you be all right. And it's important to understand that. Let's get Deuteronomy 7, read 1 through 6.
This is Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 1. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites.
All Canaanites right there.
7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them, and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away with thy son from following me, and they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly. But thus shall ye deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars, and break down their images, and cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God, and the Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people, for ye were the fewest of all people. But because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out of the mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt.
God. And that's huge, right? He says, God's going to bring us into this land. He says, don't do anything that they do. Don't marry them. You got to kill all of them. You got to destroy everything about these people, their altars, their images. Don't make no covenant with them. What is that going into? Really, it's talking about marriage. But when you have 2 nations of people, a marriage is how you build an alliance with these people. It's how you say, hey, we're offering peace. We want to coexist. We want to benefit one from another. And God is saying none of that. He's saying they all got to go, and you got to do it. You know, we failed. You know, and that's why Solomon failed, you know? It starts right here. You know, even someone as wise as Solomon fell victim to marrying the other nations and then started serving other gods, making covenants with the other nations, and then started serving other gods. You know, he was, up until that point, before Christ, the best we had to offer as a people, the richest, wisest. Man, that's how serious it is to keep these laws. It doesn't matter how up there you are. You got to be aware and be vigilant of what's going on around you. And you got to understand that, hey, they got some practices I can't vibe with. Cut them off. Like, you know what I'm saying? The wicked seduceth the way of the right. Like, they're going to seduce you over eventually. Why do you think Samson fell? You know, he wanted to give the dang Philistine girl a chance. Right. Bet she was cute. But, like, man, you over here killing thousands of Philistines. Why do you think this one want to marry you? Right. You know what I'm saying? But that's how serious it is. And we got to notice at the end of this verse, it says, the covenant God swore unto our fathers, right? This is passed down. This is the passed down wisdom of generations and generations of our forefathers before us. But in the same way, the other nations received the traditions and customs passed down from their forefathers.
That's right.
That's why we can't mix. That's why we can't mix. In the same way, people will be like, Babylon was ancient. It's destroyed. Egypt's not at its former glory. You know, they don't run the world with their super high knowledge and everything. But here's the thing. The legacy they left behind has been passed down and ingrained to society today. That's why Christmas is the most popular holiday. That's why, just for fun, people do astrology. And then, so every now and again, you'll get a dude, most likely, dealing with the girl and be like, dang, she way too deep into this stuff.
Right.
It's kind of scary. You know what I'm saying? And that's how benign all this idolatry seems. It feels and seems benign. That's how you know we're far from our God, man. We gotta get more blunt about this stuff. We gotta make a clear separation between, what's set apart. Because that's what that means. That's what being holy means. It means making a separation. So even though the Catholic Church tried to identify us as Hamites, we got to make that separation, ourselves. The Lord put a difference between us and the Egyptian. We got to make that separation, and we got to actively do it. Let's, we could talk about another thing that's sort of benign, that's become almost benign, and that's abortion.
Ooh.
It's a heavy topic, but a lot of people speak about it so casually. I seen a meme, and I laughed. Hey, man, I'm trying to come back to God. I ain't say I was all the way there.
God.
Every day I'm trying to get a little closer, but, it was a woman, and it was a group, and she was like, I had an abortion. It was twins, and then one of the women in the back was like, damn, double homicide. Ooh. I was like, dang. Right, but it was just like, it's become at the point where, one, people don't find out it's such a heavy decision until after they do it.
Right.
People don't treat it with the gravity it is until it happens to them, And that's how serious it is, but we're going to talk about where it comes from a little bit. Got you the god Molech or Moloch. So we're going to read a little bit about him.
Molech, also spelled Moloch, a Canaanite deity associated in biblical sources with the practice of child sacrifice.
Child sacrifice. Man, child sacrifice. But you got people here today who are like, I'm not sacrificing my child. It's just
it's a choice.
I'm not. Yeah, it's just my choice. It's my body, my choice. And I, they'll have a couple of excuses. Maybe they'll say I'm not ready. They'll say this world is too harsh. Right. They'll say it was an unwanted baby for a number of reasons. Right. So go ahead, keep reading.
The name derives from combining the consonants of the Hebrew melech, which is king, with the vowels of boshet, shame.
King of shame. Ooh, we's a cold people, man. We's a cold people. We called they God the king of shame, passing your baby through the fire. That is shameful.
The latter often being used in the Old Testament as a variant name for the popular god Baal.
Baal, meaning Lord, right? So we live so close to these Canaanites. Like, if any of you study the Paleo-Hebrew, it'll be called Ancient Phoenician or Proto-Canaanite or, something like that. But these Canaanites, we went into their land, and occupied it. For all intents and purposes, we speak the same language. We kind of grew up the same way. We were in that land commingled together. Why? Well, we didn't kill all of them like God told us to.
Right.
That was number one. But because of that, we were seduced to their ways time and time again. And that's why they have a God with Hebrew, with his name's King in the Hebrew. And we was like, man, we can't call this dude king. We gonna have to, let's switch it up. We gonna call him King of Shame, you know? Go ahead.
In the Hebrew Bible, Moloch is presented as a foreign deity who was at times illegitimately given a place in Israel's worship as a result of the syncretistic policies of certain apostate kings.
Hey, syncretistic.
A foreign deity who at times illegitimately given a place in Israel's worship as a result of the synchronistic policies of a certain apostate kings. The laws given to Moses by God expressly forbade the Jews to do what was done in Egypt or Canaan. You shall not give any of your children to devote them by fire to Molech, and so profane the name of your God. That is Leviticus 18 and 21. Yet kings such as Ahaz, 2 Kings 16 and 3, and Manasseh, 2 Kings 21 and 6, have been influenced by the Assyrians, are reported to have worshipped Molech at the hill site of Topeth, outside the walls of Jerusalem. This site flourished under Manasseh's son, King Ammon, but was destroyed during the reign of Josiah the reformer. And he defiled Topeth, which is in the valley of the sons of Hinnom, that no one might burn his son or his daughter as an offering to Molech. 2 Kings 23 and 10.
So Molech and Baal closely related, father-son relationship. Well, no, Dagon and Baal is a father-son, but Molech and Baal closely related. Even as it goes, early in the scripture when it talked about we got to destroy their groves as well, those were like these altar places where you would pass your child through the fire. A bull-like creature would be set up, fires would be lit, and newborn babies would be given unto the fire, under this bull idol. You understand? So it just gets heavy when you think about it, because even the children of Israel leaving Egypt, when Moses was up in the mountain, what did the children of Israel make? They made a golden calf.
That's right.
Right. What do you think they were going to do next?
Definitely worship it.
They started the party, but Moses came down. God had to send Moses back down before they could finish that party. But when you read more and more about Moloch, it's like, well, why would people give up their babies? Well, for prosperity. That's one of the reasons. For good, what do you call that? Karma, like good karma.
Right.
Good tidings, different blessings they could receive if they beseech this God by offering their baby. And I had to think about that, man. Why do people get abortions today? I'm just not in the financial space.
Right.
Right. So you'd be in a better financial space without this baby. And they were sacrificing their babies to be in a better financial space. It's like the things that were past, they're here today. Everything is so ingrained in our culture, in this American melting pot, that it's hard for us to separate the evil from the good.
Yeah.
But that's why we got to use discernment. A lot of the justifications people had today, they had the same justifications back then. They weren't that different from you or I. They were like, man, I'm poor. The world's a terrible place. He's just going to be born into war where the Philistines are constantly fighting the Israelites. They're constantly fighting those people. It's a bad world. I'm not going to be able to take care of them. Father's not here. These are all, hard. It's tough. It's tough, but the same God that's alive today was alive back then and saying, this stuff can't continue. And us as Israel, we need to destroy these practices. The law still stands.
That's right.
The law still stands. We can't allow these practices. People will say, well, what about the people who have gone through this, and they'll come up with a crazy situation. And a lot of times they're real situations. But in all honesty, that's an unfair argument. What we really have to do as pursuant to the law is create that environment where those things are highly unlikely to happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And in the Bible, it was like there wasn't such a thing as like if we're doing things right, people shouldn't be going hungry. You could glean from people's fields for free. You were supposed to. We have laws about specifically stealing food. There's a lesser penalty for that. Stealing food in broad daylight. We had Levites who were set up. We gave them 10%, and they were supposed to use that 10% not only for their upkeep, but for the upkeep of the entire nation and the poor among us.
We had righteous judgment.
Righteous judgment.
So when crimes were committed, they were judged righteously and punished righteously.
Exactly. So, I definitely feel sorry for those who have, say, a rape case. I definitely do. But, when we're handling our business in the way we should handle it, that's going to happen a lot less. There's going to be and even when that does happen, there'll be support. There'll be ample support for the people who have gone through that. And there will also be ample judgment for the people who perpetrated that. And guess what? That discourages more of that from happening.
That's right.
You see one rapist get his head taken off, that scares a lot of them. Rapists are weak people. They target the frail, they target the insecure, those who can't fend for themselves. But if the men are up to the task, and we got good righteous men patrolling, making sure everything's good, a lot of our women would be protected.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, us knowing how to rightfully divide the word, going back to this law, showing ourselves men, establishing the law, as Paul says. And that's how we can come out of this. That's how we can stop having the bad excuses. Because, I ain't gonna lie, when I first came into the truth, someone hit me with that. I was like, oh, man, this situation, that's tough. But now it's like, man, if we handling this law properly, if we handling our stuff properly, then the weapons that come against us, they won't prosper.
Right.
All right, let's finish this off. I hope you all have a good understanding of the paganism from back then is to now, and we have to be on the lookout for that. So let's just get about 3 more scriptures. Let's get Revelations chapter 17. I said that right. I think I said that right. Revelations.
You got it.
Kind of rolled on the tongue there.
Revelations chapter 17.
Verses 1 and 2.
Verse 1. And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication.
And read verse 5.
And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
Ooh. Ooh. So, a couple things from this. Revelations, prophecy, future prophecy of the last days, There's there's prophecy and revelations that we're waiting on, and we could get real deep into Revelations, but I just want to show you what to be on the lookout for as regards to Babylon, what came from Cush and Ham and these things. So read that verse 5 one more time.
And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
Mystery Babylon the Great. So this final beast, right, is going to be, is Mystery Babylon the Great, mother of abominations, mother of harlots. What does that mother mean? It means it's the place where these things come from, where they spawn from. And guess what? It's nurtured there.
Right.
Right? Mother of abominations, mother of harlots or whoredoms. And we know how the Most High feels about whoredoms, both physical and spiritual. So in this land of Mystery Babylon, it's called that because ancient Babylon was also the mother of abominations and whoredoms.
That's right.
We got to watch out for the same thing today. Christ says, as in the days of Noah, so will the coming of man be. Right in the days of Noah was the worst sin the world has ever seen. That's why God has to flood it. But now with Babylon, introducing all this, you could say, pagan practices back into the world and the world being overrun by them, now we're ramping up back to the days of Noah. Because all these abominations are being birthed and nurtured again, being raised up. That's why you've got riots in the street. We must have abortions. These things are being nurtured. You understand? So that's what we got to be on the lookout for as believers, as followers of Christ.
It says it right here, the inhabitants of the earth, which have made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So we're drunk off of committing these abominations.
Every sip of wine or alcohol is easier than the last sip.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So it gets out of hand real quick.
Right.
Gets out of hand real fast. It's like, and it just goes back to what I said, man, and I'm going to keep using this example because it is the harshest example, but I want you to know this is across the board for any paganism we run into. That rape case, they make a hard case for an abortion, man, but we got to stick by our guns and say, that's not happening. Why you let that one go is just like sipping wine. You got to let the next one go. That's right. Also kind of that hard. And then the next one after that. And next thing you know, you drunk off this stuff. Everyone deserves the right, my body, my choice. I deserve the choice to do with my body. I deserve to kill the little kid. Like, it gets there. That's what it means when it's the mother of these things. They're being nurtured and raised here and growing into a cancer until the smell reaches heaven. So it's the same thing on a lighter note with Christmas, right? It's just for the kids, man.
Right.
Easter, we do the eggs for the kids.
Right.
What do eggs have to do with the resurrection of Christ?
Not a thing.
I'd actually wouldn't say nothing about Easter if they didn't have a whole fertility goddess ritual. Like, okay, you just want to celebrate Resurrection Sunday, whatever. But the fact that you got... You know what I'm saying? And they use the excuse, it's just for the kids. These excuses don't matter. The kids will be fine.
They really will.
They really will. They really will. So let's get Revelations 11 and 8. Just to show you, back with this prophecy, just to show you how hard God is looking at this place.
This is Revelations 11 and verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt.
Sodom and Egypt. Whoo! What is this? These are descendants of Ham.
Right.
Once again. But it's just like God is trying to tell you that this place, the spiritual fornication that is being nurtured, is as Sodom, is as the sin of Sodom. It's as the sin of Egypt. It's as the sin of Babylon. It's just like in Torah, where God told us, hey, whatever you see the Egyptians do, don't do. Whatever you see the Canaanites do, don't do. As what was said in the beginning, he's calling to our remembrance and saying it in the end. Hey, in that great city where many of the righteous were slain, man, it's going to be like Sodom. it's going to be like Egypt. You got to be on the watch. You got to be on the watch for astrology. You got to be on the watch for homosexuality. You got to be on the watch for a child sacrifice. And what is all that? That's Molech. That's Dagon. That's Tammuz. That's Nimrod, Semiramis, Ra, Horus. All one and the same. As the earth gets closer and closer back to one language and one speech, we got the rise of the internet. How easy it is for Google Translate to let you know, to talk across the world and they know exactly what you're saying.
Right.
You know, we see today the Pope of the Catholic Church is branching out to the high caliphs of the Muslim faith, coming together. They're trying to bring the world back on one accord, on the left-hand side, on wickedness.
Right.
That's why abominations are increasing in the earth, because the earth is going back to that state of one world government, and that's what ancient Babylon was. That's why it calls it Mystery Babylon today. It's going to return to this great, vast empire that's going to build a tower up to the heavens in the hopes that God can't scatter them. But we know that's not the case. We know that even as Sodom, it's going to get to a point where God's going to have to end it all. So last verse, 1 Peter 5:8. Appreciate y'all sticking with me. You know, good little exhortation, little lesson. I hope, you know, through most of this, what you understand is how to think when you read the Bible, the importance of lineages in the Bible and who they go back to, because it'll tell you how we went off, you know? It'll tell you why, like, man, we didn't kill all those Canaanites. I hope this doesn't come back to bite us. David, in the matter of Uriah the Hittite, he comes from that Hamitic line. He was in that land. If we killed all them, David wouldn't be an adulterer. He wouldn't have conspired to murder. His son, Solomon. If we'd done our part early in those days, you know, maybe he wouldn't have married all these foreign, strange women to turn him to other gods. You never know, man. So
This is 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour.
be sober. Don't be tipsy off that Babylon wine. You know what I'm saying? Because as a roaming lion, Satan's seeing who he can devour. You know, you look at any predator, they don't want to go after the strong, I'm going to put up a fight type of prey. No, they want the prey that's lagging behind a little bit, that's a little slow,
Right.
that's not paying attention. And guess what? If at all possible, he's not going to pounce on you. If he can, he'll walk up to you all nice, you know, like a wolf in sheep's clothing, be like, how you doing today, buddy? How you doing today? Can I get you to come in on Saturday?
Right.
Oh, yeah, really? Oh, well, we're doing overtime. $80 an hour. I'll throw in time and a half. Yeah, oh, okay, all right. You know what I'm saying? So we got to be sober and vigilant. We got to understand that everything in this world isn't as it seems. We got to understand that Satan mixes a little truth with the lies to try and get us to take the bait on that hook, you know? Just like we're fishers of men, he's trying to fish you. You got to be careful what kind of meat you're going to let into your system. Trying to give you the meat and bread of this lesson, but you can't eat the ham sandwich.
That's
All
right.
right, Shalom. That's Shalom.
Shalom,
This is
yo.
your brother Yathrawan. Shahad, appreciate you. And we signing out.
Don't forget to like and share the class. Shalom, yo.
Shalom.